Hi, everyone. If you're here for the webinar, we were just going to give it a couple minutes in case anyone's trying to find the link or trying to log on, but we'll get started really briefly in a little while. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So first, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Haley Cragness, and I am a PhD student at McMaster University studying psychology, and I'm also the co-chair of the OOO Canada Research Network. And I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on supporting open research in Canada. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And I'd like to draw your attention to the chat bar on the side. We're going to have someone watching it, so please don't hesitate to interact with us, ask any questions you have, or make any comments, and we'll do our best to address things as they come up. So before we begin, I would like to thank our co-hosts, the Public Knowledge Project and the Center for Open Science. So there'll be representatives from these organizations will be talking later about some of the projects that they're working on. And I hope that after the webinar, you'll check out some of their amazing work they're doing, aside from what they're going to be talking about today. So this webinar is an event that we're holding for International Open Access Week, which is this week, if you didn't know already. So it's a global week for open advocacy, and the goal is to make open practices the new normal in scholarly work and scholarly communication. So the theme of this year's Open Access Week is Open in Action. And if you follow the link that we have provided here, action.openaccessweek.org, you can find a web page where they have a list of actions that you can take today to make your own work more open. So there's many different options they provide. So even if you're just starting out in this community, just starting to learn a little bit more about it, or whether you've been part of the community for a long time, you could deposit an article into institutional repository, for example. Just a lot of things that you could do yourself that wouldn't take very much effort to engage more in the open community. So hopefully some of what we're going to cover today in the webinar could help you with some of these things. Visit the site and commit to 1 or 2 small actions that you can do to help make your work more open. So today we'll first give a little introduction to OOO Canada, our research network, and my co-chair Lorraine Chen will follow up on that. And then afterwards, our colleague Juan Alperin from Simon Fraser University and the Public Knowledge Project will be talking about a new project he's working on review, promotion, and tenure, and how open is incorporated into those processes. Next, we'll have David from the Center for Open Science, who I'd just like to thank. He is substituting for our Open Science Framework representative. He came in last minute, and we're really thankful for that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And the Open Science Framework is one of those resources that you can, a really excellent resource that you can learn about to use in your own work. And finally, we'll return to Juan, who will talk about the Open Journal Systems, another excellent resource. So who is OOO Canada? It's actually OOO Canada, you'll notice. And so that stands for Open Access, Open Data, and Open Education. And these are the 3 prongs of our open advocacy. We're a group of students, both undergrads and graduate students, as well as early career academics and researchers who advocate for open and transparent approaches to scholarly communication at Canadian institutions. As a group, we're quite new. We're coming up on our 2nd birthday, and a pretty small group. I guess we have about a dozen members or so, but we're quite widespread. So we have representatives from Ontario to Manitoba to British Columbia, and we started out as a group who were interested in learning more about open access and incorporating it into our work, but we were having a hard time finding resources in the Canadian academic environment that addressed our specific priorities as young scholars. So university entities do in this, for example, librarians already have a lot of resources on open, but we found that even with these resources, the concerns of young, earlier career scholars were not necessarily a part of that conversation. So we wanted to create a place for early scholars to go and learn more about open in a way that was specifically relevant to them and to their career aspirations. And B, we wanted to create a network of people who were interested in these principles so that we could exchange ideas, support each other, and share resources, particularly those that are specifically geared towards the Canadian institutional environment. We are still sort of gearing up on a lot of our initiatives, but our main goal is to educate and raise awareness about open issues. So we do this through some events that we hold. We encourage our representatives to hold events at their own institutions and to have some crosstalk about what's going on. And our ultimate goal, of course, is to encourage those around us to adopt open research practices and to convince them that it's good for science and good for their own work. And finally, we're interested in connecting students to pre-existing resources, institutional open advocates that are already there, and compiling a lot of these resources in a one centralized place like our website that others can draw upon. So now I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Lorraine Chun, who will talk more specifically about the work that we're doing at OOO Canada.
Okay, 1 second. Can everyone hear me? We're
Yep.
good? Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Lorraine Chen and I'm the other co-chair of OOO Canada. So while Haley spoken broadly about our mission and overarching goals, I wanted to talk about some of the specific work and ongoing initiatives that we've been working on, and also speak a little bit about how you can get involved or participate in some of these things. So as Haley already mentioned, and as most of you have probably already stumbled upon if you're at this webinar, we do have a website where we try to centralize as many introductory resources about open issues as possible. And you can access that at www.oocanada.ca. So that's not really anything special, but what I did want to draw your attention to was our blog that we have, where we highlight open activities that are relevant to people at Canadian institutions. So we have everything from opinion pieces, pieces that summarize events that we've held, and our most recent blog post is by Juan, who will be speaking later on this call, and it's about an interesting research project about openness in the review, promotion, and tenure process. So we definitely welcome external contributions. So if you have something to say or you want to update people on a project that's happening on your campus about open initiatives, then we really welcome you to get in touch with us and contribute to our blog, because we're always looking to post new content. We also hold events throughout the year. Our biggest upcoming event is OpenCon 2016 Toronto. So this is a satellite event that's held in partnership with the more global OpenCon meeting that's happening in Washington, D.C. in a few weeks, which is a meeting for students and early career academics to learn and discuss open access, open data, and open education. So our local Toronto event will be a one-day conference that's open to anyone to attend in Ontario or Canada more broadly. And we have a handful of local speakers who will be covering a bunch of super interesting topics. I'm really excited about it. We'll have everything from sort of broad talks on why open access is important to covering more specific topics like openness in art and design, or how concepts of open science differ across geographical contexts. So I really encourage you to visit our event link, which allows you to learn a little bit more about the event and also register. So our early bird registration closes on November 19th, I do believe, and it's $10 for students and $15 for non-students. If the cost does pose a barrier to your attendance, just get in touch with us and we'll see if we can work something out. Finally, as Haley might have mentioned, we're a fairly new student group, and up until this last summer, we had a handful of members that spanned maybe 5 or so institutions across Canada. So I realized this was not super representative of Canadian students and researchers geographically, which is why we started last summer recruiting campus reps. So essentially, campus reps are undergraduate or graduate students who liaise between their institution's existing open initiatives and our own research network. Basically, they're responsible for connecting with any librarians or faculty at their institution who are already working on open, and then bringing them back to the OOO Canada Research Network. They're also responsible for holding 2 or 3 events over the school year that advance open on their campus. And they also meet with the OOO Canada Core Committee once a month via Google Hangouts to give updates. And this just helps us get a clearer, more unified picture of the open activities that are happening across Canada. So if you are a student and you're listening to this webinar, I really encourage you to apply via this tiny URL link. And if you're not a student, but you know someone who might be interested, I encourage you to pass the link on to them. And what I do want to stress is that you don't have to be an expert on open issues to apply. I don't think many of us were before we were on this committee. You just need to care and be willing to learn. And we've worked on developing a guide for all of our campus reps that have a bunch of introductory materials and suggestions on how to get started on their campus, who they might connect with in order to hold events. So yeah, that's it from me. I'm gonna pass it on to Juan to talk about the RPT project that he's working on. I'm just gonna. Okay.
Okay, hello, can everyone hear me now? I think I've successfully managed to unmute, which is always a challenge for me. So thanks for that introduction. I just wanted to say I'm excited to be here, and I've also been part of the OOO Canada group for a while as one of the early career researchers in the group. And one of the things that, even though I've been working in open access for a long time, I wanted to talk a little about a project that I started with two other OpenCon alumni just earlier this year that we managed to get some funding for, around how we might think of other ways in which we can motivate open access and open practices in scholarship. Because one of the things that we always hear when people talk about why we should be doing open access, that we have heard all kinds of really good arguments, and all arguments that I'm a very big fan of and that make a lot of sense to me, around the citation advantages to publishing in open access, the ethical imperative, the reason that it's the right thing to do, the need for open access and the need for new economic models. In view of the serial crisis and the rising costs of publishing, the educational benefits of having materials be available and having students be able to access everything that they need, as well as the public's right to having access to knowledge. And all of those arguments make a lot of sense, and they're all great, but when you go to events where people talk about these things, one thing you always hear is, yes, those are all great, but they are not necessarily good for my career. My committee values me publishing in this particular group of journals, or my committee that is going to evaluate me for my career is thinks that I should be doing these kinds of things, and they don't give any importance to those open practices. So why should I devote a bunch of time and energy or effort into doing those things, into learning about them, or into trying, if they're not going to be things that are rewarded? And this all really stemmed from even my own experiences, having worked in advocating open access for almost 10 years, and realizing that as soon as I took a faculty position 2 years ago, I started to have moments of reflection as to, okay, which one of these things, are these things going to count? Are these things going to matter to the people on my department? And I'm very fortunate that I do have a very supportive department that actually values and understands these things. But we realized that we needed to think about ways of trying to incentivize doing openness. And so this is one of those things where we wanted to take some action into trying to see how we might understand and how we might help to change those incentive structures. And it seems that the review and tenure process that faculty regularly undergo on a yearly or biannually, or and then the tenure review that goes on 5 or 6 or so years after they start their careers, that was a process that, if we could understand what was going on there in relation to openness, that it would be a great lever for incentivizing change. And so perhaps trying to include language that in those guidelines and documents that say that departments value openness would be something that would start to give people the personal incentives that they need beyond all of those external things that they might value. And so in thinking about how we might change that process, as a researcher, the first thing that came to mind was, okay, well, we need to actually understand to what extent is openness already valued in this process. And so we've taken a project where what we'd like to do is collect as many review and promotion and tenure packets as we can. So the guideline documents, any forms that faculty are asked to fill out. And then we're going to be doing a textual analysis of those documents so that we can see what kind of language is already. Can we identify some good examples? Can we identify where the areas that need the most work are, and so on. And so we have started this project, and we're trying to collect these. And one of the things that we are asking for anyone that wants to take action this week, you can just take 5 minutes to try to and just send us some documents from your institution, or request these documents from a faculty member if you don't have one, or just Google and see if you can find any publicly. There are some instructions on, I think Lorraine posted into the chat the blog post on the OOO Canada website, and at the bottom of that post is some links to the instructions and some steps that you can take. It literally can take you as little as 2 or 3 minutes to find a document and send them to an email address for us. And if you don't find one, it's just there's a template email you can use to email professor and any faculty member and ask them to send you their guideline documents. These are documents that are generally, they don't need to be private. They're documents that if they're not publicly available, it's just because no one has thought of putting them online. And so if you can just email your faculty member and say, could you share these documents with us? And then you can use them to, and then just forward that email on to an email address that you can see. It's rpt-project@sfu.ca, and you'll find that email address in the blog post and at the bottom of in that resource page at the bottom. So this is one way that we've decided we could take action, and it's doing some research and enabling other people to take a small action to support this project, so that what we learn from this project can be used to create effective change in the review and tenure process going forward, and change that includes openness in its different forms, having those values that we all say that we care about around why we want openness, but having those be codified into the review process so that faculty have personal incentives to actually go about carrying out those changes. I think that's really most of what I wanted to say. I'm happy. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat if people have questions about the project as you go through those posts. And if you have any questions about what you should be looking for or what you should be asking, you can direct them to me and just put them in the chat or send them to my personal email. And I'll be happy to answer and help support if you would like to help to collect some of these documents from us. We're hoping that people can just devote a couple minutes and put open into action, as the theme for the week is, and help us with this project that will hopefully lead us to a broader campaign around change in the review process. I think with that, should I just turn it directly over to David, or Lorraine, will you do or Haley will be? I think I'll just turn it over to David, who will now tell us a little bit about the Center for Open Science and the Open Science Framework, and even give us a little bit of a walkthrough and show people a little bit about the work that the COS and it has been doing in this area to help people make their research and all of their work openly available.
Thank you. Yes. Can everyone hear me? I think so.
Yep.
I'm going to share my screen. Hold on one second. That one right there. All right. My name is David Meller. I'm from the Center for Open Science. We are a nonprofit organization whose mission is to increase the rigor and reproducibility of scientific research. We do that through a couple of different ways. We conduct meta-science projects to sort of measure the extent of the problem and how hard it can sometimes be to replicate original research. We have a large community team who advocates for policy changes and educates on best practices in open and reproducible research. But most of the folks who work here at the center are programmers who build tools that enable all of the actions for which we advocate. So what I'm going to do now is give you an introduction into our main product, the Open Science Framework. You can visit along. You can see what I'm doing as I go through a project that I'm going to be demonstrating. This is all at osf.io, the Open Science Framework. I'm going to work here on a project I have. Everything in the Open Science Framework, it revolves around individual projects, and each project has 3 major parts to it. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So the first part of a project is its wiki. And the wiki is just any place to put, here I have a beautiful picture of a bluebird modeled roughly after one of my undergraduate projects. Text, pictures, anything you want to put to just give a narrative description of anything that's going on in your research project. The other major part, the second major part of an OSF project is its file storage capabilities. I'm going to go into a little bit of details about different storage providers that you can use and connect to the Open Science Framework. But most of the stuff that I do is stored directly on the Open Science Framework. There's no file limits, there's no size limits to what can be stored on the OSF, any digital shareable material. And then the third major part of a project is, scrolling, are the components. And so those are simply sub-projects that can hold different parts of your project. So I have 3 components here for data, analysis scripts, and references. Everything on this project right now is private. Everything is private by default, but I'll show you some tips and tricks for making something public. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a new component, just a sub-project within my Bluebird study here. I'm going to call it manuscript. Maybe I'm ready to start writing the article. Manuscript. Create the project. And I'm going to go to the new component. And here, just as promised, everything from that parent project is showing up here in this component. So it's a wiki. One part of it, you can start to add files within your manuscript component. And you could even go down the rabbit hole a bit more and have more and more nested components. But I'm not going to spend any more time right here. I'm going to go back up to the parent. I'm going to show you some of the file upload features and then how versioning is built into the Open Science framework. So right now I'm going to grab a file from my desktop. I think you're only seeing the one window I'm working on, but I'm dragging my field notes. And do you see this? I'm just dragging and dropping from my desktop into the field notes here. And what I'll do is once that uploads, I'll go into it. All right, so just a very basic Word document or rich text file that I uploaded right now. I've got 9 lines in there to show what's going on. And what I want to show you next is some built-in version control, because what happens to everybody in the world is dealing with the latest version of our project and who is adding new comments to it. So what I'm going to do is add one more line to that. 10, 22.5. Save it. I'm going to upload one more time. Upload one more time. And what I'm doing, I didn't add any annotations to the file. I didn't say field notes version 2 or field notes _ Meller's comments. I just uploaded the exact same file to the project. And I'm going to go to that one more time. And you'll see now version 2 is showing up here. You can see I added a little bit of information. I added a 10th line into here. And I'm going to click on that version 2 just to prove to you that the original version still exists. And so if you're making mistakes or if something gets corrupted down the line, you're always able to go back to see what originally go back in time. And so this built-in version control solves problems as you are dealing with constantly updating manuscripts or field notes or other types of documents. Everything on the Open Science Framework is built to encourage and nudge individuals towards more open, more transparent, and therefore ultimately more reproducible research. And so right now, this is a private project. There is an analytics page, which I'm going to click on, and it's going to be very disappointing when I first click on it. Nothing's available here because I have this private project. So I'm going to go back to my project. And I'm going to make it public. Gives you a warning, say, if you make it public, people will be able to see it. That's fine. I'm not ready to share my data because it's ongoing, and maybe I have some personally identifiable information in there, so I don't want to share that yet. I'm fine with people seeing the references I'm using. I'm fine with people seeing the analysis scripts because it's, I hope somebody uses them and improves upon them. And I'm also not going to share the manuscript yet because it's a work in progress. And so I can share different parts of my project as I am able and willing. Made public, confirm. All right, now if anybody listening wants to, you should be able to go to this link. I'm not sure if you can see it, but the link is osf.io/9ks2m. And that's, I don't expect you to memorize that, but I'll try to share that afterwards. And you should be able to see parts of the project that are public. So you're not going to be able to see my data. You're not going to be able to see my manuscript, but the analysis scripts and the references are going to be in there. Now, if I go back to the analytics page, just letting it refresh. All right, one person, woo, has visited my project so far. And if there's a lot of people online now, and if I convinced you and was able to convey the link to you correctly, maybe a couple of other people will click on that. So that's just one of the incentives baked into the Open Science Framework for encouraging more use. And you can see who is, if it's a file, who is downloading and using the project, etc. All right, next thing I'm going to do, a couple more minutes. One of the main purposes of the Open Science Framework is to collaborate in research labs. So it's designed to to address problems. You have a large research lab. Oftentimes people will come in, undergraduates will come in for a semester, grad students will come in for a couple of years, they'll leave, but projects go on. And so the Open Science Framework is designed to solve the problem of continuity within a research lab while making work more reproducible, both for yourself, for your immediate colleagues in the lab, and then eventually for other scholars who might want to build upon and use that work later. So for right now, I'm going to show adding a contributor. I'm going to add a friend of mine, search for her. I'm going to add Sarah to my project. I can give her different types of permissions. Read is just giving her access to see things that might otherwise be private. Read write is obviously the ability to add content, add information to the project. And administrative privileges allows you to add more contributors and do other things to that project. So I'll add Sarah as a administrator. I'm going to search for one more person. Add another colleague of mine here. I'm going to give him just read access to the project because he's a student. I want him to be able to see stuff that's going on that might otherwise be private, but I don't want him messing with anything because I don't trust Tim that much. All right, and so who do I want to give these permissions to? I want these people adding data, maybe adding references, and maybe editing the manuscript, but I don't want them messing with the analysis script, so I'm not going to add them to the analysis script. That was all me, all my own work. I don't want them to have access or use that at all. So I can give them different access to different parts of the project. And there they are. So if I go back up to the parent project, I'll see myself, Sarah, and Tim are now added as contributors on my project. One more, let's see, a couple more things in just about 3 more minutes. Also here in the contributors is this neat feature called view only links. So oftentimes you'll have a private project, but you'll want to share it with editors or peer reviewers. You'll want to include otherwise private information for a select few people, but you don't want to go through the trouble of adding them to your project. They don't deserve to be a peer reviewer who you might not know who it's going to be, obviously, or the editor. You're not adding them to the project, but you want them to have access to information that might otherwise be project. So I'm going to create a peer review link right here. I'm going to anonymize it, which means that when somebody follows the link that's about to be created, they won't see the names of the people on this project. I'm going to give them access to everything because I'm being completely open with the peer review process. All right, finally, that will generate this link right here, and you can copy and paste that link and share it in your submission to a journal, or share it with people that you want to give access to your project for whatever reason. Let's see, one more thing here. I'm going to go into the files project. And you can see I've got OSF storage. I've got a couple of pictures, my field notes in here. Here in the data part of my project, I haven't used the OSF storage because maybe my collaborators don't really want to use OSF. They are frequently using Google Drive or perhaps Dropbox. Here's an example of a Google Drive add-on. So I keep these data files in Google Drive. My collaborators are using Google. They don't want to shift to a new system because there's costs and barriers to that. So that's fine. Any changes that happen to this file in its Google Drive will show up here on the OSF. And it's a comma-separated value file. So it'll show up here on the OSF, and you can see all the details of it. And you can see there are some names in here, and this is the reason I didn't want to make this part of the project public, because it is sensitive information. So let me get out of here. And then last bit, I want to give one shout out before I leave for one of our biggest initiatives, and that's the pre-registration challenge. So a pre-registration, what that is creating a snapshot of your project before you start analyzing your study, or ideally before you start data collection. And I don't have enough time to give a whole lot of details about that, the reasons for that, but basically pre-registration specifies before you start digging through a data set how you're going to judge the outcomes. So how you're going to collect the data, how you're going to analyze it, and then any other analysis that you do after you collect your data, you are free and encouraged to report as exploratory data, but your pre-specified confirmatory tests are held to the highest standards of rigor. And so this pre-registration competition will give $1,000 prizes to 1,000 researchers for publishing the results of their pre-registered research. You can learn more about it at cos.io/prereg. Or if you're in a project and you want to register it right away, you can go to the registrations part, new registrations, start a pre-registration. And it puts you into a form. Not many people know about pre-registrations outside of the clinical sciences. And so what we did is created a step-by-step form so that you can know exactly what detailed information needs to be included in your pre-registration in order for it to be a complete and valid analysis plan. And with that, I'm going to take any questions and pass the baton. Let me see if I can find questions here. Yep.
Good. It doesn't look like we have any questions. So thank you so much, David, and we'll pass it back to Juan to talk about OJS. I'm just going to present you.
Hello. Okay, thanks. I'm going to just do a little bit of a preamble, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to James McGregor, who has also been with the Public Knowledge Project for a long time. I won't even hazard to try to remember exactly how long, but who will actually walk you through a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit about the Public Knowledge Project, because the Public Knowledge Project is one of these projects that has been supporting open access for a really long time, since the early 2000s, and it's sort of this, has been in some instances sort of forgotten because it's a project that has been just become part of the infrastructure that makes open access available in huge swaths of the world. And I'm going to see if I can actually manage to share my screen as I talk, but Google Hangouts sometimes makes my computer grind to a halt. And I just want to show the map that we have available on our website around where we find open journals using open journal systems around the world. We have almost over 10,000 journals that have been using open journal systems, sort of that are actively publishing as of 2015. And you can see that they're sort of located in every corner of the world in some way or another, with some countries having actually quite a few journals. Brazil is almost up to 2,000 journals using Open Journal Systems. For those that don't know, Open Journal Systems is a journal managing and publishing platform. So this is for people that want to, maybe not for individuals who are just making their own research available, although chances are that if you're a researcher, you have almost certainly read journal articles that have been published using Open Journal Systems. I always sort of end up coming across them randomly in the research that I do, and I'm sure that others do as well without necessarily realizing. But if you are wanting to put your journal and make your journal available online, this is an open source alternative to the commercial publishing platforms that are out there, so you can sort of DIY your own journal publishing, or you can contract. There are services out there that will host and help to manage your Open Journal Systems installation for you. But it's essentially what WordPress is to blogs, Open Journal Systems is to academic journal publishing. So like I say, we have almost over 10,000 journals around the world. We've had, if you look at the content that's available, made available by Open Journal Systems over a period of time, you see that there's content, dating back actually well before 1990, and I've only just put that there because people have made their back issues available. But you see also growth especially in the most recent years, with reaching over 10,000 journals in in 2015. And if you look at the number of articles made available by Open Journal Systems, we're making over 400,000 articles available for any given year through our publishing platform. But this is not a platform that we are centrally hosting and that we are managing the way that the Open Science Framework is, but rather very distributed. These are journals that are all sort of, like you saw, distributed all over the world, where some instances will have just a single journal, and others will go up to several hundred journals in a single installation, so that universities, independent scholars, and some publishing operations make their work available. Like I said, the software has been around since the early 2000s, but just this summer we released Open Journal Systems 3.0, which is a fairly big overhaul, especially of the user interfaces, but also to a lot of the back end of what you, if you have ever encountered Open Journal Systems, you have seen. And so I want to turn it over to James, who will be able to show you a little bit of what Open Journal System looks like, so that you, as you start coming across these, you recognize these to be Open Journal Systems instances. And if you're ever interested in setting up a student journal, or setting up or helping to support someone that wants to turn it, either flip a journal to open access or to start publishing an open access journal, then this is an option that's available to you, and you can get a bit of a sense of what the software looks like. So James, if you could give people a little bit of a demo of just what Open Journal Systems looks like, but also highlighting some of those sort of new things and new features that are in Open Journal Systems 3.
Thanks, Juan, and thanks to OOO Canada as well for inviting us here to show some of this stuff. Juan mentioned that Open Journal Systems is sort of like WordPress, but for scholarly content, and I really like that metaphor, and I'll be using that as a basis for talking about some of the features that you'll see in Open Journal Systems and describing how they may be familiar to you, but also how Open Journal Systems really does differentiate itself between other online publishing platforms as well. Before I get to the demo, I just wanted to show we do have this download page on the main PKP website. And if you go there, you will see you're actually able to download Open Journal Systems yourself. It's open source software, as Juan said, so it's freely downloadable. You can use it without ever having to talk to us or anything like that. And it doesn't require much in the way of configuration or setup on a web server in order to be able to use it. It does require a little bit. But we do have a number of library institutions and other university institutions who do host it on their own web servers at their own institutions. So if it's something that you're interested in, whether it's to start a new journal or to just see how it works, you can actually talk to your institution for the most part and get an example up and running there. I will show just a few quick examples of Open Journal Systems in the wild right now. And now I will note what we're looking at right away is Open Journal Systems version 2. I just wanted to highlight there are a few student publications. Actually, there's a ton of student publications out in the world. These are just two that came to mind when I was getting ready for this, this talk today. One is Line, which is a student poetry publication. And this they have developed at Simon Fraser University. Looks like they just have the full issue available here that you can download. But they are in the midst of relaunching a journal that I think was originally available in the 70s as a student journal. And they're bringing it into the sort of the online context here, which is actually really, really interesting. Another example is the Graduate History Review at the University of Victoria. And they're working on, let's see if we go to current here, having their content published online as well over time. This was started relatively recently, I think in 2011 or 2012, and the Graduate History Association is continuing with that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to move over to Open Journal Systems 3, and I'll provide some links to these demo instances for you folks to go take a look at on your own time. So Open Journal Systems is a multi-journal capable software application. You can have as many journals as you want on one particular instance of OJS. This is particularly useful in the case of, say, a library institution who wants to provide journals to their students and faculty to run. They can manage as many journals as they want on their single instance. This is what the University of Victoria does, University of New Brunswick, MUN in St. John's, Newfoundland. There's instances of this all over the place. We can see here, this is just our demo journal instance, where we have a number of presentation journals here. And since OJS 3 is new and it has some new theming capabilities, we are using this to sort of demonstrate that we can have a different set of look and feels for each individual journal as well. New to OJS 3, if you're familiar with OJS 2, OJS 3 is responsive out of the gate, so it'll work on mobile devices, tablets, phones, things like that, just fine. I'm going to take a look at this first journal here, the Open Journal Systems Demonstration Journal. And we'll see on the main page we have content that's been published here. So again, very much like WordPress, where you can use it to publish content online, and that will be made available. You can look at it via PDF. We'll just load. You can also use the XML option here. So if you provide XML for your articles, this will generate readable XML from National Library of Medicine XML specifically. So you can actually take a look through this entire document using this sort of XML renderer or reader. And it'll do scientific notation, mathematical notation, all that stuff just fine. The reader interface also has a fair amount of information specific to scholars. So it will present citation information. It will present citation information in different formats if you need it. We have full DOI support. So if you are a member of Crossref or another DOI registration agency, you'll be able to provide information on those DOIs as well. This is all very similar to the way, say, WordPress would work for having publishing blogs and news posts and things like that. But the more important thing about Open Journal Systems is under the hood, there's a whole range of plugins and associated tools that will not only publish this stuff in a readable way online, but will also provide information for indexing services like Google Scholar to crawl and index automatically, or for other services that use other various protocols, say other databases or larger catalogs in the world, to be able to gather the information that your scholars provide within their article to be ingested and to be further accessible or further readable from a wider audience. This obviously is a key part of OJS. It's not just the reader front end, but making sure that this data is widely accessible and retrievable by these various online technologies. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what it looks like in the back end. This is all new as of OJS version 3. So if you've ever submitted something using OJS version 2, this would be a little bit different, probably quite a bit different, actually. What we see here, again, is something that's very similar to the way a sort of a news post or a blog post might be managed or curated within WordPress, but with some very scholarly specific tools. So we're looking at an article called On Submitting Content to OJS 3, written by James McGregor. We can see here we have a link to metadata, to some editorial history here, and to a submission library as well. And then we also have a number of stages for this particular article within the system. We have a submission stage, a review stage, a copy editing stage, and a production stage. So again, this is geared very much towards the sort of the online scholarly publication requirements that you would have as a journal, no matter what size, really. Just about everybody has some sort of review stage, whether it's an open peer review or a single blind or a double blind. We support it all. There's a need for copy editing, in which you can include various participants like copy editors or translators or even the authors to assist with the copy editing process. And likewise, there's a production process where you develop your PDF files or EPUBs or HTML files or even XML if you go that in depth. There's a full participant system where you can include any number of participants you want, from editors, section editors, translators, copy editors, typesetters, you name it. They can all use this system. And each stage has also has a discussions area where you basically mediate your own workflow through the use of discussions with relevant participants. The final product, of course, as I had mentioned before, reader interface, this reader area where your readers have access to the typeset and finally published PDF and XML files. They have information on the author, DOI if it's present, an abstract, and any other information they need. Finally, again, all of this information is available to other indexing services in a very open and easy to retrieve way. That's been our goal with us, and that's what we continue to provide with this software. So I am going to just leave this up, and I'll throw this into the YouTube chat as well. If you are interested in open journal systems, you can go see a demo, both of the OJS version 2.4, which is the last stable version 2 release, and the 3.0 release, which is the one we were just looking at up here. Finally, if you want to take it for a test drive, we do have a test drive of both the 2 and the 3 line. You can use the username admin and the password test drive to log in, create your own test journal, just try the software, play around with it, and see what you like. So I'll throw that content into the YouTube chat box. And that is it for me with open journal systems, unless folks have other questions.
Thank you, James, for walking people through that. I think that your ability to do that is because you've been working with the software so much more closely than I have over. I used to do software development on OJS on the 2.1, 2.2 lines, and then as I've moved away to other things. And so I appreciate you coming in and giving people that walkthrough. I just want to say just a couple of last sort of closing remarks about not about OJS in particular. OJS obviously has a whole bunch of features, and which James did not go into. We have other webinars that we've done which are recorded and available, where you can see much more detailed walkthroughs. And maybe, James, while I keep talking, you can see about digging up one of those URLs to the YouTube videos that if you want to see more details about how OJS works on the inside. This is really just about trying to give a bit of an overview and give you a sense for what it looks like. But we do have much more detail if you want to see the kinds of features that are available and how it works and how it differs from previous versions. Then just the last thing I wanted to say was that the OJS is just one of the things that the Public Knowledge Project does. It is sort of our flagship software, and it's the thing that we are definitely best known for. But the Public Knowledge Project is an initiative that is based primarily out of Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, although the director is at Stanford University. John Walensky is at Stanford, and we have have other universities that are affiliated as development partners, and other sort of folks that are, it's a very sort of collaborative project where with a lot of other sort of affiliations that are loosely, some which are more loosely affiliated and some which are really actively working on different things that PKP does. We're really a research project, and one of the other things that we do are research into different areas of scholarly publishing, and we have a project now to study cooperative models for funding open access journals. I have a project to study the public and social impact of scholarly work. The review tenure promotion project that I'm also leading is part of that. And so we are also actively involved as researchers, and we have other softwares that we're working on, and we kind of work at this intersection of where technology meets scholarly communications with an interest in improving the quality and quantity of open knowledge that is that is available in the world. And so that is sort of our mission as a project, and we try to do that in different ways, through research, through software development, through advocacy, and just through general engagement with the scholarly community in different ways. And so I encourage you and invite you all to learn more about PKP generally and about OJS specifically, and to get in touch if you have any questions, or if you'd like to learn more, or even see how you can get involved and how you can participate in an open source project and in work that is that tries to be as open as possible.
Yeah, we have 2 questions in the chat bar. I know we only have 4 minutes left, but maybe you can answer them really quickly. One was whether there's a cost to set up a journal through OJS, and whether that's influenced by region.
Right. So
go ahead.
Let me answer the first one, then you can tell me the second one, because I didn't see the second one. So the software is open source software, and it's completely free for people to download and set up on their own. There's always a cost to doing these things, in that you have to have some server space somewhere, and you have to have some amount of time that it takes to set something up, as with all open source software. So we say it's that you don't have to pay any money, but you do have to put a bit of work. PKP does also offer publishing services, in which we do host the journals for a fee. We do this entirely as a cost recovery strategy, and as a part of our sustainability for the project. And so and James is really a person who manages and is in charge of the PKP publishing services, and there's a link there in the chat, pkpservices.sfu.ca, where you can see the pricing structure. There's also other commercial enterprises that are out there that offer these services, and so we have ours that if you use, you are helping to support the project, but the idea of all open source software is that people can host this thing on their own without needing to rely on a paid option. And what was the second question, Lorraine?
Second question was, this is awesome. Is there any estimate to how long the review process takes in open access publishing?
This is very much varies a lot by journal. The idea of having a publishing platform that enables the review to take place to help to organize it. And I always say in some ways it's the insurance strategy, in case the person the alternative is to do it all over email, and the insurance strategy in case that person whose email it was going to ever gets hit by a bus, you want to have everything in a centralized location where the communications are, so that someone can come in and pick up and take over. I think the software we have had very positive reviews about how it helps in the review process, and how it helps to sort of streamline it. And then it depends on how active the editors are and how their capacity to motivate the reviewers to get things online. So the system itself really is just a communication platform that centralizes the interactions between all of the different people, the authors, the editors, the reviewers, etc. Then the slowdowns are really in the reviewers primarily, and the editors having the time to go through these applications. And so estimates range from a couple of days to some journals that take months, and to even some that take years before they can get their journal out. And we hope that using our software can help speed up that process.
Awesome. So I think we've hit an hour. I'm not sure if there's any other questions, but yeah, thank you so much to David and James for joining us last minute, and thanks for everyone who took the time to watch. I hope it was helpful, and if you have any questions, you can always visit our website. We have contact information up there for you to get in touch with us. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and final day of Open Access Week.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.